How do you think that oxygen got on this planet?
I don't know.
In the beginning, it was all a carbon world, yes? And
Yeah.
if you're going to contribute all of this just to trees alone and bacteria, that's not it. There was an event happened on the Earth that made oxygen the abundant and hydrogen abundant. Do you know what it was?
No.
Lightning.
Uh-huh.
Large amounts of lightning, interference into the atmosphere. Think about it. If you've got a lot of water, yes,
Yeah.
you don't have much in the way of oxygen. And especially when Earth's a carbon planet. So if you were to look at Mars being carbonated, if it had water on it and you hit it with lightning, you would release the hydrogen and the oxygen from the water. So Earth being a water world is quite an interesting thing. So you take that as a little bit of so an event that would trigger a large amount of oxygen to come out. That's why most things in the beginning were all sea creatures, because the oxygen inhabited gills allowed them to survive in the water with the oxygen base. That's how you get oxygen life forms on the planet. Mainly dominated with plants. Sure, plants had this, but there was a bigger catastrophe that happened, something that came too close to Earth. So you take Io when you look at Jupiter and you understand how Io is quite close to Jupiter, and this discharges 3 million amps onto Jupiter with its interference because it's close. So you would take the moon. So when we had a large amount of oxygen on the planet, you would then have to understand that it might have been contributed to the moon, but the moon didn't collide with it because that doesn't work that way. It would have been a near miss. It had got close and captured, and each time it was very close, this would have caused those like 3 million amps to burst out on the planet. This lightning strike that doesn't hit land, that hits water, one, it does two things. First off, it removes the moisture levels go down, and then you get more of a gas. That's very interesting. You don't only get a gas when the water goes down, you also get land mass, plus with volcanic eruptions as well. Another thing, if the moon was nearer to the Earth, yes, it would have caused the volcanoes to explode a bit more, to get a bit more. But if it collided, it probably wouldn't have had the same effect. It'd have bounced off, and we wouldn't have a moon. But it was more closer, therefore causing this friction. This friction then caused the atmosphere to get a little bit crazy. It would have discharged around 3 million amps. So when we take a look at the molten core, if you bring the moon closer, you amplify the moltenness of the core, and therefore you get a lot of things go a bit more liquidy. More liquidy then means more of a volcano erupt, therefore creating land mass. Plus, with the lowering of the oceans, which you get lightning strikes hit those, you then get fresh water, which is interesting. You get a large amount of oxygen. You get an abundant gas of hydrogen, and yeah, this just runs away and runs away and runs away, and then you get a really nice moon. Now, whether that was done via hands of clever, intelligent beings, let's say, intelligent beings, then that's a whole different kettle of fish.
Mm-hmm.
So life forms in the beginning, apart from nature and mushrooms and fungi and stuff like that, would have been more water based. So therefore, there would have been more creatures in the ocean than there was on land. And this allowed for all of these have knock-on effects like columns, and then this then allows tides to creep in, creep out, creep in, creep out, and as a result, sea creatures would have been close to these tides as the tides rise up, and then it would have dipped away and they would have held their breath. So it would have been more of a carbon based water creature in order to stay inside the liquids because of the oxygen in the water. But how do you release the oxygen from the water is lightning. It's also known as electrolysis, I believe. You get some other gases come out of that as well. Salt water is not the best one to do it with because it can be quite toxic. But I think that there was more trees and that they would have been the only ones that could really dominate that sort of carbon environment. So to make Mars into an oxygen planet, you would need to find moisture low down and then hit it with lightning. And if you were to hit that with lightning, it should start to convert the gases into hydrocarbon, no, hydroxy, which probably was some carbon as well. Very interesting. So yeah, and then all of this starts to run away. So very interesting, really, isn't it, to think about it? But yeah, how we had a carbon planet once, and then they say that we then have a oxygen-rich planet. Well, there's it's not all played down to this cyan bacteria, although it's a good theory, but it's not the one, I don't think. I think it's more lightning. It's more logic. It's more grounded in reason and logic if you think of a body that came close to the planet. And when you look at Jupiter, the clues are everywhere. When you look at Jupiter and the way that the Io interacts with Jupiter, especially on the dark side of Jupiter, you see this discharge of energy. And again, if Jupiter had a large amount of salt water on it, it would be more abundant in oxygen. So that would eliminate that its core is made of liquid, of anything liquid. It doesn't mean that it's not having an effect on its metallic core. Yeah, it still will be having an effect. You see, I like lightning. It fuses things together. It also creates ozone as well. So when you first start to strike, the lightning first strikes in the ocean and it starts to discharge this oxygen and hydrogen. Yeah, it will do some other things. So when it repeats this, it creates some of those oxygen molecules to come together and make ozone. Also, this would explain the abundance in plants. So now we see that nature's decaying in different areas. I wouldn't put that all down to carbon and oxygen imbalances. I would put that down to more, the less lightning you have, I think that nature struggles because there's less nitrogen. You see, and when you have lightning, it also converts it. It feeds nature in a how do I explain that? It makes a food for nature, and then you see decay in forests and different things like that. So what it needs is lightning too, in order to hit the nitrate. So could it have been covered in trees? No, because dinosaurs say that it wasn't, right? Back at the times of Jurassic and beyond that, back from that, there would have been less nature. So perhaps nature didn't actually. Maybe I could walk back on some of this in this whole video, just thinking about it. If I just think about it, because I just want to think about it a little bit more. There was less trees. That's why the pine trees were so rare back then. And then there was pine, birch, hazel, elm. So yeah, they might have exploded along with this event that happened. They got going first. That's what I should say. So nature got going. Nature got a head start. Nothing really much that would bring it down or use it. Then the oceans, the tides, humans would have learned to hold their breath. They were probably eating something that was part nature, because nature helped us out. And then we become trapped by nature, and nature traps us. We're trapped by nature, and vice versa. We're not really, but it's nice to be hand in hand with nature. But we would have been at the shores, and then when the tide starts to recede, rather than follow the water, sort of hold the breath or learn to try and breathe, and then go back into the water, and bit by bit, whilst trying to eat this stuff, this new food source that probably clung around rivers, estuaries, and oceans. Probably then started getting going. You are what you eat, right? No longer absorb vitamin C anymore. So, and then with this tide rising and falling, it would have gave the first land animals. You see it with dolphins and also orcas, where they crash up onto the shore for a bit. It's not much different from that. If orcas are given enough time to do that, they will become land creatures. Well, I don't know if it's me or the lights are flickering. I don't know. Maybe something's flickering. Or maybe it's just me. I can see flickering. And that's probably what human were doing. Well, in your fish state, ocean state, whatever it may have been. Frog state, reptilian state, whatever it is. And then you might see an introduction of life. Nature paved the way. Then humans came next. Animals and humans alike, perhaps more first than us, and these all came from some cataclysmic events. So The moon, I don't think it hit the planet. I think it was really close, causing all of this friction. And the moon is moving away bit by bit. I'm almost sure of it. And as a result of that, less lightning means perhaps the fall of nature. And then if nature falls, human life forms are next. That's how it's going to be. I think because something happened that made nature abundant. Something happened which hit into the oceans, maybe caused lightning, which converted the atmosphere, made it ready. Man, it's really strange, isn't it? All these events happen and great things come. And you could say, well, meteorite come and killed the dinosaurs, which is brutal, and then it led to your rising. I don't know, perhaps people probably ate them, was probably more logic in that. You'd eat them, perhaps, maybe.
And some of them died out as well.
Yeah, so perhaps humans' first food source was in the ocean was perhaps some greenery, maybe, depends on what was about at the time, but also other fish, other life forms in the ocean. I think it would have been what you could get your mouth into. And then if anything was on land and you were coming up at the tide, you'd eat something meaty in some of this greenery stuff. It's never true herbivore. So to say that a rabbit is a herbivore is not true. Because do rabbits lick clean the lettuce and spit out any bugs or slugs that are on it? If you want to say lettuce or their vegetation that they eat, they are also eating meat in that. It's just when you say herbivore, and you learn it from a teacher. Teacher taught me that there's a herbivore. I don't know. I disagreed because I'm growing my veg and different things like that. And some of the rabbits that would be about would eat that. And I see it eat it with a slug on it. I didn't really give a shit too much, to be honest. That wasn't true herbivore then. It sort of had that. So there's never a true herbivore. So it's part and part. So that's not naturally so. And if humans or other animals eat meat, they eat usually the content of what's in the animal and what the animal has been feeding on. Sort of like a roasting veg. Especially if you've ever had a cat, you'll observe this. They're meticulous, but they will eat most of what they get. Near enough all of it, stomach included. I know it sounds brutal, but still, brutal allows life. Then there's brutal that dinosaurs disappeared for another one. So all catastrophic events always lead to rising. And it also happens with empires as well. You'll notice that. And also with a change of empire, there's a change of tech. There's a change of understand. It's never, nothing in life's journey is ever actually truly bad. It just reforms, reshapes, and transforms. Everything is transforming in a way. And even catalytic events, it uses to transform. The God particle in us all. Yeah. Yes, if you want to call it that, then that's that transformation, which I find very fascinating. So, hydrogen technology got a lot to teach everyone, I think. But lightning in water and Tesla's device of Nikola Tesla, his great big. Now factor in some water into that, and I just wonder how the plants respond to it. Wow. Do you know how plants respond to that? It should be a good question, because I think there's missing bits from that when you hit it into water near a plant, watch it explode with life. That's interesting. Really explode. So, and then that's good because if you can explode nature like that. So in a biome, space travel, I see these big domes, yes? Biomes with lightning hitting into water, like a waterfall with this lightning strikes hitting into it, into this big biome of just massive greenness, just towers over you. I think if nature's given the room and the ingredients that it needs to become healthy, I think that's what we'll see. So we could be focusing on carbon and oxygen and carbon and oxygen and our carbon and oxygen. Yeah, sure, I'm not going to say that is nor isn't. It's, yeah. But what about lightning in water? High amounts of energy into it. This also feeds nature, and nature feeds our lungs and feeds our bellies when times are hard. We can survive on this food. And also, if meat eats it, if you say meat, you want to desensitize yourself from it, and meat eats this and relies on this, then they get a healthier food, and therefore anybody that eats meat, who's a meat eater or a vegan or anything else, everybody needs this. So yeah, that's where I think water comes from. Oxygen, and hydrogen. Yeah. So I think it comes from this, and I think if overlooked, it's just a tidbit. This is just a little tiny tidbit. So yeah. So to make a successful underground farm, or NASA did an experiment once, locking this biome in, but it didn't do too good. Try lightning into water, and it needs to be electricity then, but like the Tesla version, where you can see it. That hit into mist, maybe, but I think more water, if it was aimed down at water. So rather than having that go across from one side to the other, where you got a long piece and the circular piece on this side, have that part half in water, and so you get the bolt to come down into it. And yeah, I think that will boom any greenhouse anywhere, and it makes the food really big, I think, because you're feeding into it. And plus, what you are doing is you're releasing a large amount of oxygen and hydrogen. But there you are. You could collect the hydrogen and use that for something else. But either or, that's where I think it came from. So yeah, just tidbits. Anyway, so I'm going to leave this one here because I think I said enough. I did. Yeah.